Let's be honest, there's no guidebook when it comes to relationships. So we end up having to stumble through life trying to figure things out for ourselves. What if there was a podcast that found the answers for you, that provided insight to build a successful relationship and ultimately find the companionship you've always hoped for? Welcome to the Girls Ask Guys show, where we answer the questions most people are afraid to ask when it comes to lessons in life and love. It's time to master this thing called life together with your hosts, John and Ashley.
And welcome back. Today, we're going to get into something pretty intense. We're going to talk about prenuptial agreements. Now, I have a very strong opinion, as does John, and that's how we decided we were going to do this show. We started talking about it. We got a little too into it, and we go, you know what? We should record this. So, John, what are you talking about? What do you think?
Yeah, actually, I do have a pretty strong opinion on this, but it comes from my own sense of logic. And really how we started talking about this was I was talking to my next door neighbor. As I've mentioned in a couple previous episodes, I do have a shoulder injury, so I can't really go out and mow my lawn. He came over and asked me if he could mow, and I was like, sure, go for it, man. And then he asked me what I'm up to. So I told him about the podcast, and he said, have you guys ever talked about prenuptial agreements? I'm like, no. But I have seen on the GAG website, and it's also posted out there in other social medias, people are talking a lot about prenuptial agreements. And as Ashley said, we were talking about it. We're like, we should do a show on prenuptial agreements.
Right. We really should. And we're going to, because prenups are such a touchy subject, but there's a logic to them, but there's also a deviation to a prenup to where, you know, you're worried that the person you're marrying is a gold digger per se, and you don't want them to take your stuff. However, there's also the clause in there where if you like John was saying earlier, sometimes people get accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And so they've devoted their life to you.
And my example was if I got married to somebody and we were married for 10, 15, 20, 25 years, and my lifestyle is a lot higher than hers, say that I've got a car for every day of the week, and my walk-in closet looks like Macy's, and she's coming from hoping that her car starts in the morning and her wardrobe consists of about 4 outfits. Yeah, that's a huge increase in lifestyle, but that's where alimony comes in. So in order for them to become accustomed or to maintain a semblance of that lifestyle. But as far as a prenuptial agreement is concerned, my personal opinion on it is if you are asking for a prenuptial agreement, then there's a trust issue involved in there. Why are you planning your divorce before you even get married?
I think a lot of people have it as a fail-safe or a safety net in case. I think, because to me, usually a prenuptial agreement is, you know, if this happens, you know, let's say we're talking of a millionaire. If this happens during the course of our marriage and we get a divorce, you don't get anything. I am not a fan of alimony. I understand what you're saying when it comes to women being accustomed to, or a man being accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And so, you know, they've had this giant, tax bracket increase. So now they have to go back to having nothing. I don't think that matters. To me, I'm more about the child support kind of thing. If you guys get married and have a child, I don't care what happens to the other parent in the sense of finances. To me, the parent who's the breadwinner is responsible more so financially for a child. So that to me is where the prenup needs to come into place.
Yeah, because a traditional prenuptial agreement, according to how I understand them, is whatever you came into the marriage with, you leave with. So if you came with nothing, you leave with nothing. If you came with everything, you leave with everything. Anything that was purchased during the marriage would be pretty much liquidated and divided equally amongst both of you. But if it's all bought from his bank account or her bank account, then it belongs to them. It's really a complex thing. Now, I can understand if you're like, say, Johnny Carson, you've been married 13 times and all 13 times you were taken to the cleaner. I do believe his last 2 marriages, did have a prenuptial agreement involved because he was tired of losing $60 million every time he turned around.
But this to me is where honesty comes into place the most. If you're marrying someone, and people do this, people have done it since the beginning of time, they get married transactionally. Traditional old school marriages were purely transactional. It had nothing to do with love. It had nothing to do with pursuing matters of the heart. It was your country and my country, or you have 7 goats and we have 3 goats and together we have 10 goats. It was purely transactional. It's when love came into play that people really, really started to have to put in these prenuptials, because some people were in love, some people were in love with money. Now, if you really believe that the person you're with is a soulmate, I don't even think a prenup would come to your mind.
That's what I fall back on is if you're asking for a prenuptial agreement, let's just say you're basic middle America and you've got maybe $5,000 to $10,000 in the bank and you're asking for a prenuptial agreement. Why? To me, if you're asking for a prenuptial agreement, you're really not ready to get married yet. That's my personal take on it. And agree or disagree however you want. I know that there's a huge group out there probably going to write in and rip me a new one. So be it. You have your opinion, I have mine. We can agree to disagree.
Right. I don't understand, and it's probably because I've never been married, or maybe because when I do enter a relationship, I don't enter relationships with people who I think may take my money. I mean, granted, if they try to, joke's on you. But like, if I feel, you can usually feel out a gold digging person. We've all dated someone who thought, they were in this for the money, which is hilarious. But when you see that, I think there's types of behaviors you need to look for. If you're okay, let's say you're a super rich person and you meet someone super hot and super superficial and all you care about is that arm candy, then why would you even have a prenup? If all you care about is how they look and, what they look like on the side of your arm, who cares if they're having a divorce? You guys don't actually love each other anyway. Or not a divorce, sorry. Who cares if they're having an affair? Who cares?
Yeah, if it's just for the looks, and so that when you go to the party, as far as guys are concerned, you go to the party and you've got all of your bro friends coming up. Dude, who's she? She's hot. Yeah, I know, man. Then who cares? You pretty much bought your wife transactionally. We get married and I provide you a new car, new jewels, new dresses. And when we go to bed, well, you take that room and I'll sleep over in this room. It's transactional. Amazingly enough, a lot of people in Hollywood do that. It's a transactional engagement or transactional dating because one movie star is trying to capture the audience that another movie star has. You see it all the time. Yeah, it's going to be in the tabloids up next to the register. So-and-so breaks up with so-and-so. Major fallout. This, that, and the other. The whole thing was a setup from the start. Their two agents came together, sat down, talked. Do you agree to this? Do you agree to this? Okay. Go out, get some paparazzi pictures, and here's going to be the end story.
I remember when I found that out, my heart was broken.
I mean,
because it's sad. It's sad that we live in a world. I'm a love person. So to me, transactional marriages, as powerful as they can be, they break my heart. Like, honestly.
And the truth, there are still arranged marriages.
Absolutely.
They're not very popular in the United States, but they do happen. Let's see, easy way of putting it, it's usually from immigrants from another country, and they kind of bring that tradition with them. But it happens overseas quite commonly. And, don't worry, you will eventually learn how to love them. Yeah, after 10, 15 years.
To love each other. Yeah. And actually, I don't think arranged marriages are as bad as transactional marriages. Arranged marriage, it kind of takes the finding someone out of things. So the lazy person in me is very interested in an arranged marriage, but the hopeless romantic in me couldn't imagine getting married to a complete stranger.
As many relationships as I have been in, there was nothing transactional about it.
I've been in one transactional relationship and I was perfectly fine with it. And I really was. We both knew what it was and what it wasn't. And then the person found someone else who could provide more and left. And I was kind of upset because I did actually grow to enjoy the person's company. I really did. Yeah. I enjoyed their company. I enjoyed everything about them. And it happened purely transactional in the beginning. It was, you need food and I want to have sex, which I know it sounds bad. Please don't judge
friends
me.
with benefits.
But honestly,
it's the same thing.
Or not food, but right. Exactly. It was that. And then it turned into me actually starting to grow feelings for this person. And then I realized that for them, it was always transactional. So I actually played myself.
And friends with benefits is a totally different episode. But it's the same thing where two people kind of link up to each other and then feelings kind of start to come into play. But those feelings are on one side. It's kind of like, it's kind of like our episode on crushes. All the feelings are on one side and not shared by the other.
If you are in a transactional relationship, you have to keep your head up and realize that it's transactional. And then when they leave for someone who's more of a provider,
they level up. They're moving to the apartment on the high side.
Right. The deluxe, right? And the thing in the sky. And you're the third floor. I mean, and I was hurt, of course, but I realized probably after about 2 weeks, I was like, leaving for a person who is literally a multimillionaire.
The only way that I could possibly see an actual need for a prenuptial agreement, and we're talking about people with hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in assets. We're talking like Bill Gates getting married to the owner of Google. You're talking two major corporations, and those two corporations, if they get married, those two corporations pretty much now belong to both of them. Now, hey, I built this corporation from scratch. It does not belong to you. And if we end up getting divorced, it stays with me. That I could possibly justify. But if we're looking at a house and a couple of cars, who cares? If I started with nothing, I can rebuild and buy another big house eventually.
Right.
Oh, but my friends, they're going to look at me. If they think that of you, they weren't your friend to begin with.
Right. I'm now thinking about Bill Gates marrying the owner of Google, and that sounds like some sort of royal wedding, and the whole entire world would be required to attend online. Could you imagine the amount of money in that divorce?
Like hundreds of billions, not just cash. I'm talking few assets and future values. Oh my gosh!
I would have a prenup for that. Honestly,
I could justify a prenup for that.
Absolutely. You're not going to marry me and then leave me in 2 years and take half my... This goes back to my thing.
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos, man. Idiot. I don't think he had... Well, when they got married, they didn't have nothing, but they didn't have everything. Yeah. So, of course, there was no prenup. Now, this guy gets all this money. He cheats on a woman who was with him when he had barely anything.
Yeah.
Look at him now. Listen, ladies, this is a long con. And she wasn't in it. Obviously, she wasn't in there for a long con. She probably had no idea that Amazon would rise to the level of they
own like 75% of the American market.
Right.
If I'm correct, it's based on how much shipping they do, that they own 75% of the American market.
So I'm sure she had no idea that she was going to gain this unfathomable, untold wealth of riches. But she stayed. And I don't know if she was faithful the whole time. She really, and this is where when you say, if they're accustomed to a certain lifestyle and they were with me for that whole time, I can get behind it. Because she did. She rocked with him from what I think Apple started in a garage and Amazon started in like a small business park or something.
Actually, I think,
or not Amazon, but
Jeff. I remember the story correctly, it started in his garage when the internet was nothing.
She started, she was in the garage while he was with the band, and she was playing the triangle, and then all of a sudden they become, the Jackson 5. She's still with him. Of course. She's earned that in a way, because when you are married
you're putting
to
up with all their bullshit
and
while
you're
they're building it.
Yeah. I'm 100% sure, and I believe this with every actor, every actress, everybody who we see who does press and media. Some of them are absolute nightmares.
Yeah.
when they get home.
Jim Carrey was that way.
Oh yeah. What you see is you see the made up press forced to do this interview. You don't see the real person. They're constantly acting. So I'm sure there were not every night when Jeff came home, it was awesome.
Oh, no. People are people.
Right.
There's going to have good days. They're going to have bad days. Because I know I've been with people and I'm working on a new idea, a new company. I get like totally focused on getting it done. And I hit that stumbling block where I just have no clue as to what the next step I need to take is. And I don't want to fuck it up. And I become extremely agitated trying to locate that piece of information. And so I have my bad days and they're like, what's going on? Nothing. Don't snap at me. It's not my fault.
Yeah, I'm a leave me alone person. Leave me alone. I don't want to talk. I don't want to, and it's everybody. We all have our way of dealing with hyperfocus and stress and wanting something to succeed. So when you get to that level where you're wanting to succeed is exceeding $1 billion, you can only imagine.
Yeah, your troubles become compounded. When I was working financial services long time ago, I would work with people who had almost nothing. They got like $500 in the bank, maybe. And then I would work with somebody who's got 5,000, somebody who's got 50,000, somebody who's got 5 million. And when I'm working with these people, what I realized, the person with $5 million in the bank has the same problems the person who has maybe $500 in the bank.
They're just struggling at a higher level.
They're struggling at a higher level. They just have more zeros at the end. They still have daily lives and daily problems that everybody else has. It's just compounded.
And instead of being responsible, let's say the person with $500 in the bank, maybe they're super irresponsible, can't keep money in the bank, they have a good job. But for all intents and purposes of this conversation, let's assume they are working a low level or an entry level job.
Yeah.
They're not in charge of anybody.
Yeah, they might have one person that they oversee.
The guy with the $5 million, right, the guy with the $5 million in the bank, he's probably in charge of 50, 60, maybe even 100 people. And it's crazy. When
I was stationed in Omaha, Nebraska, believe it or not, the guy who lived 5 doors down from me is listed in the top 5 billionaires in the world. Mm-hmm. I would drive down the street and he's sitting out there and you would never know it. If you didn't know what he looked like, you would totally pass right by him. But he's out there with his push mower mowing his lawn. Yeah, he had this really fancy car parked out back. He used that to go to work. But if he was running around town, no joke, he had a Dodge pickup that he drove around. Yep. But jeans, t-shirt, but yeah, he's going to work. It's suit and tie time.
Oh, I know a guy, and this is another one of those secret millionaire stories. I know a guy, he's got like 6 teeth, and he's really cool, and he works with us at our local theater. He owns a helicopter. He owns one of the biggest helicopter repair companies in America. Mm-hmm. I mean, when I say like rich, I mean, think about it. He's had a helicopter repair company for 25 years.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it speaks for itself. And you see these people, and he's married, and I highly doubt, and I'm actually probably going to ask him next time I see him, that he has a prenup. Because him and his wife is such a solid marriage. And that doesn't mean, a solid marriage does not mean it's not without its issues. A solid marriage means, at the end of the day, you know what? If we do go to bed angry, we're going to wake up and talk about it.
Yeah. They've been with each other long enough that they know the tools that they need to pull out the toolbox in order to fix whatever's wrong.
Which is why they prenup, because they say sometimes, and I think this is something I got from my parents, that some things, because, every marriage has issues, some things are bigger than our tiny little problems. So let's say my dad went out, and this would never happen, but let's say my dad went out, got super drunk, and got into an accident. Is my mother going to leave him? No, because in the big picture, they're a team. It's like if you're a football team and one of your players breaks their leg, are you going to drop them from the team? Or are you going to let the wound heal and then help them rehabilitate themselves? And that's, to me, why prenups are so unnecessary. Because if you see the actual picture of what a marriage is supposed to be, it doesn't mean that someone's going to be 100% faithful. It doesn't mean someone's going to never yell at you. It doesn't mean that someone's never going to lose their temper
Annoy you.
or leave for 3 days. It doesn't mean any of that.
That's that thing that I keep falling back to, is that there's a trust thing.
Mm-hmm.
You love this person and you trust this person enough that you don't see a need for a prenuptial agreement. And I've heard the argument, oh, but it's an insurance policy. Well, are you kidding me? You can superficially make the argument that, well, you get insurance on your car, but you don't drive your car and expect to get into an accident. Well, duh, but I'm not killing or possibly injuring somebody else and putting them into the hospital or affecting their life to the point that they can no longer work.
Well, and then what are you insuring? You can't insure that they're going to be faithful. You can't insure. If you think that a prenuptial agreement is going to ensure fidelity, it's going to ensure a marriage that's going to last forever, you're insane. If anything, it gives somebody a clause to get out of a marriage. Because honestly, think about this. If someone's unhappy, they're going to leave regardless. And whether it's $5, $50, $500 million on the table, if you're unhappy, you're going to go find your happiness somewhere else.
And if that level of trust wasn't there to begin with, if that level of emotional commitment wasn't there to begin with, you shouldn't be getting married anyways.
Absolutely. And this comes down to transactional versus love. You need to be honest. And I think we don't have this conversation because people are afraid of looking at gold diggers or whatever you want to call them. They're afraid of looking like that.
Well, those people, they
exactly.
exist.
And there's people who want to marry you.
We were talking about over in I forget which episode it was. It might have been our entertainment episode. But I was talking about David Bowie.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually stumbled across an episode on his life. His parents, according to him and his cousin and a few other close friends, they said that his parents were married out of convenience.
It happens.
If you look at the picture of him with his mom and his mom with his dad and stuff like that, she is never smiling. It's like she was extremely unhappy, but it was a marriage of convenience.
Which is sad.
I couldn't see doing that. But, I mean, it's a different culture.
Yeah, we also have more options. Just because you can't see yourself doing it doesn't mean it's not. People, you do what you do. And this sounds horrible, but sometimes you do what you got to do to survive. If it's a marriage out of convenience, that is going to keep you. I don't necessarily know why they got married, but if a marriage is what's going to keep you alive or going to keep you from making a big mistake or any of that stuff, you do what you got to do, and that's all there is to it.
But I still don't see the need for having a prenuptial agreement.
I don't actually agree with that.
Because the other person, they can tell. I mean, I know that during the 60s, just talking with my mom, there were people, they were getting married because it would delay their draft to the Vietnam War. Let's get married. And it's a marriage out of, well, they're kicking into survival mode. How do I stay out of going overseas and winding up on a list? People who lived during that time, especially for older listeners, probably remember watching the nightly news and they would roll the list of everybody that died that day overseas. Yeah, I don't want to be one of those names. So, we're getting married or I'm moving to Canada.
But it's not going to happen the way you think it is. It's that kind of thing. It's not going to. It's survival, like you said, and I see absolutely nothing wrong with it because at the end of the day, you do what you do, and you have to do it to survive. And if it means getting married, some of those marriages, believe it or not, they probably still lasted.
Yeah, I think she did mention one that she knows of that, the marriage actually, it worked out. But if the topic of a prenuptial agreement pops up, the whole wedding thing needs to go on hold. You need to re-examine the engagement and everything else, because to me, a girl comes at me with a prenuptial agreement, hey, this whole thing is on hold until we figure out why you feel you need that.
And if you have that much money to where you think I'm going to take it all from you or I want your money, chances are if I'm marrying you, I don't care about your money. Chances are. I mean, if we're in this transactional thing where you're like, hey, Ashley, I have $80 billion and I just need someone to marry for this specific reason and then we can get divorced. I mean, let's be honest. I mean,
it's going to be a transactional marriage.
It would probably work.
But I've known people who did have a lot of money, and I mean, you would pass them on the street and not even know they had that much money. But I've had friends who had a ton of money, they were going out with, I was like, does she know how much you have?
Probably doesn't
No,
care.
and don't tell her. Okay. He wanted her to love him for who he was, not for what he had.
Of course.
Finally developed to the point where he did tell her, and
But when you really love
took
someone,
her back for about 5 or 10 seconds. She's like, because I was in the room. Yeah, she was actually sitting there. She goes, okay, well, that's cool.
right? Nice.
But he was really nervous because he was expecting her to like change overnight, and she didn't. And as far as I know, they are still happily married.
Because when you actually love someone, and I mean like you actually love someone, then you know what? None of that shit does not matter. You can be broke. I mean, I've met couples who are literally poor as dirt and they are so in love, and it's so beautiful to see. But then you meet couples who are, they have all the money in the world and he's beating her ass behind, when the doors close, or she's doing all kinds of pills and all this stuff.
Even worse, they're complete strangers sitting in the same room. Because I've seen that happen. Yeah,
they got married because their parents thought it would be a good idea. So when you truly love someone, none of that shit matters, at all. And it never will.
So if the topic of prenuptial agreements comes up, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, both me and Ashley have strong opinions on that. And my opinion is, if a prenuptial agreement comes up, you got to look at why you're considering getting married in the first place. Now, if you got like major corporations, hundreds of billions or millions of dollars in assets that come into play, with that in mind, a prenup is probably in order to protect the corporation or the company. I could justify that. But if you're just like average, ordinary, everyday people, I don't see it. Yeah, my company might become something. That's a might, hope, and a maybe, buddy.
And if you don't trust her or him, talk to him. That's a whole novel idea. Imagine that. Having a full-on conversation saying, I'm worried that you're this way. And if they take it the wrong way, if they get super offended and crazy, then maybe they were and you triggered something.
Or you didn't really trust them to begin with.
Right. But if they're able to have that conversation with you honestly, have the conversation. It's worth having.
Yeah. Come at me with a prenup and we're going to have a talk.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk.
And every single relationship I've been in, from the time I walk up or I say hi to somebody, I'm fully prepared to walk away because I have no agenda. It's because of that is also how I'm able to stay friends with exes long afterwards.
Good on that.
There's no sexual anything. We're just, how you doing? Let's have a drink, catch up.
If I've seen you naked, I'm going to want to see you naked again. It's just the way I roll.
Yeah. Did we hit the topic? Did we give you something to at least think about? Did we totally stray off and just piss you off? Do you have a better reason for justifying a prenuptial?
Did she steal all your money? Are you still hurt about it?
Yeah. Yeah. Write in. Let us know. Rate the show. Let us know how we did there. 1 star, 5 stars, doesn't matter. Because your feedback actually helps us get better.
Believe it or not, we do want to get better. I know we're pretty much the best you've ever heard, but, there's always room for improvement.
That's all for this episode of the Girls Ask Guys show, where all of us learn to master this thing called life together. For more answers to your questions on life and love, be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss a single episode. And head to girlsaskguyshow.com to submit your questions for a future episode or apply to be a guest on the show. Good luck out there, and we'll catch you next time, right here on the Girls Ask Guys show.